Sentenced to death twice.
Scheduled to be executed.
If the death penalty was ever set forward for anything, it's for such a heinous crime of this magnitude. If not for this, then what for?
In the ominous shadows of the prison system lies death row, a chilling final chapter for those condemned for the most heinous acts. While the end here is almost always fatal, through either the cold clinicality of lethal injection, the stark finality of a noose, or other equally grim methods, there exists a handful of tales where fate played a different card. Individuals against all odds who stared into the abyss and walked away. How? Why? And what becomes of a soul who's defied the Reaper on death row? Stay with us as we unravel the gripping narratives of those who've lived to tell the tale. John Babacombe. In the quaint town of Abbotsford, Devon, in 1864, a child named John Lee took his first breath. Little did he know his life would be woven into an enigma. By 1884, he was implicated in the chilling murder of Emma Keyes, his employer, with her life allegedly taken by a knife's cruel blade on a cold November evening. The evidence? A mysterious cut on Lee's arm and a background littered with petty theft. In the eyes of the 19th century justice system, when forensic science was still in its infancy and the scales of justice were sometimes a bit skewed, this was enough. Though he cried his innocence, John Lee's pleas fell on deaf ears, and a grim fate awaited him. Sentenced to death, the infamous Exeter prison became his temporary abode before he met the hangman's noose. But as dawn broke on February 23, 1885, destiny had a different plan. The very platform that was to usher Lee to the afterlife malfunctioned. Not once, not twice, but 3 bewildering times. A scaffold that was tested and retested, each time refusing to do its dark duty. This bizarre malfunction baffled everyone and became the talk of the nation. Sir William Harcourt, the Home Secretary of the era, demanded answers. Was it a mere technical glitch or was some otherworldly force intervening? Investigations unraveled a curious twist. A simple misalignment during the scaffold's relocation had spared John Lee. This alignment mishap, this minor hiccup in the machinery of death, became Lee's unlikely savior. But fate's favor didn't stop there. Lee's sentence was reduced to life imprisonment, and yet that too wasn't his destiny. He found freedom in 1907, walking out after 22 years, a shadow of the sentence he was meant to serve. The world would come to know him as the man they couldn't hang. His narrative became legend. The written word bore his story, silent films echoed his name, and eventually the shores of America welcomed him. Adopting the moniker James Lee, he continued to defy fate until 1945. It makes you wonder, was it sheer luck, divine intervention, or perhaps something more elusive that protected John Lee? One thing's for sure, his story will forever echo in the corridors of time. Anne Green. In the tapestry of human history, every so often, a story emerges that challenges our understanding of the world, where fate and faith entwine in the most unexpected of ways. Such is the tale of Anne Green, a woman whose life story was painted against the backdrop of 17th century England's unforgiving societal norms. Picture this: the serene town of Dunstan, Oxfordshire, where Anne Green serves dutifully as a scullery maid in the grand residence of Sir Thomas Reed, a justice of the peace. But even in such stately walls, passions run wild. Sir Reed's teenage grandson, Geoffrey, with youthful impulsiveness, casts a romantic spell on Anne, who was a few years his senior. The resultant clandestine affair, shrouded in secrecy, leads Anne down an unforeseen path: pregnancy. But fate plays a cruel trick. Unaware of her condition, Anne suffers a miscarriage at 17 weeks. Fear, a powerful motivator in an era where reputation was paramount, drives Anne to hide the aftermath of her miscarriage. But as with many secrets, the truth emerges from the shadows, revealing itself to those in power. Sir Reed, eager to protect the family's honor, presses charges against Anne, wielding the concealment of birth of bastards act like a sword. This very act, meant that hiding the death of an illegitimate child was tantamount to a confession of murder. Despite Anne's protestations, despite a midwife's testimony that the fetus wasn't viable, the wheels of justice turn ruthlessly, and Anne is condemned to hang. The date: December 14, 1650. To ensure death's grip, a soldier mercilessly strikes her hanging body. Lifeless and cold, Anne's body is handed to the scholars at the University of Oxford for the sake of science. But sometimes, life has a way of defying our understanding. Two Oxford physicians, Petty and Willis, are greeted not by the stillness of death, but the faintest spark of life. Their swift medical intervention breathes life back into Anne, her heart and spirit refusing to be quenched. Anne's revival stuns the community, leading many to see divine intervention, a signal from the heavens declaring her innocence. Anne Green's remarkable tale became legendary, transforming her into a symbol of resilience and redemption. Granted pardon and viewed as a living testament of a miracle, Anne continued to breathe, live, and inspire until 1659. Her journey serves as a powerful reminder of the mysteries of life and the sometimes inexplicable ways of fate. Kenneth Eugene Smith. The hands of time bring us to the contemporary setting of Alabama in the 21st century, a world where technology is advanced, human rights are championed, and justice systems are perceived to be more just. Yet, shades of the past seem to echo as we delve into the harrowing story of Kenneth Eugene Smith. 1988, a year that would seal Kenneth's fate. Convicted of a heinous crime, the murder of a woman, Kenneth found himself awaiting death's embrace. But today's journey from conviction to execution is long and winding. By 2019, Bureau of Justice statistics unveiled a chilling truth. Those on death row lingered for an average of 22 years before facing the final curtain. Kenneth, however, surpassed even this average, spending an agonizing 33 years within the bleak walls of Holman Correctional Facility. As the sands in his hourglass dwindled, Kenneth made peace with the inevitable. When the day arrived, November 17, 2022, the dark theater of capital punishment commenced. Yet destiny had a twist in store. At a moment when his end seemed inevitable, the 11th Circuit Appeals Court interceded, ordering a stay on his execution. Yet, in an act of sheer defiance, the prison officials marched forward. In the modern age, death by lethal injection is regarded as the most humane method, a cocktail of drugs designed for quick and painless departure. But for Kenneth, this transition was anything but serene. As the clock ticked, a horrifying scene unfolded. The medical team, grappling with Kenneth's anatomy, failed to find a viable vein. Hours passed, with torturous attempts, even tragically targeting his neck, until, ultimately, the procedure was abandoned. Left in a pitiable state, gasping for breath, weakened and traumatized, Kenneth was returned to the cage he'd known for over 3 decades, his fate now hanging in limbo. The ripple effect of his ordeal reached the higher echelons of Alabama's governance. Governor Kay Ivey, shaken by the revelations, temporarily halted the death penalty, allowing for an investigation into these flawed procedures. The question that looms large: what's next for Kenneth Smith? Will he face the needle again, or will he become a symbol of the inherent flaws within our capital punishment system? Only time will tell, but his story serves as a stark reminder of the gray areas within the black and white of justice. Joseph Samuel, the German. The year 1780 marked the birth of a man who would defy death itself. This man was Joseph Samuel, a notorious robber, and the embodiment of the phrase, cheating death. The tapestry of his life unfolds with a dramatic turn as he finds himself transported to Sydney Cove, a remote British penal settlement. Yet, the chains of confinement couldn't hold him long, and Joseph tasted freedom once again. But liberty came with its vices, as he aligned with a gang, and their criminal ventures would lead them on a path of violence. The dice of fate rolled when their endeavors resulted in the killing of a man of the law, Officer Joseph Luker, While the hunt for justice was swift, the scales seemed tipped against Joseph Samuel. A single witness's identification was enough to put him in the crosshairs, and despite his protestations of innocence in the murder, the court invoked a principle that would seal his fate. The shadow of vicarious liability cast over him, leading to a death sentence, even as his cohorts walked free. On a fateful day, September 26, 1803, the air in Parramatta was thick with anticipation as a horde gathered for a spectacle: the public hanging of Joseph Samuel. The execution method was one that promised a slow, agonizing demise. A sturdy hemp rope, crafted with precision, was secured around his neck, ready to deliver its fatal promise. But destiny, it seemed, had other plans. The gasps of the crowd mingled with the creaking of the rope as it snapped, sending Joseph crashing to the ground. Shock reverberated through the crowd. Joseph's unexpected reprieve starkly contrasted with another convict's grim fate, who hung lifelessly beside him. The determined executioner, however, was unyielding. Once, twice, thrice. Each attempt seemed to mock him as ropes slipped and snapped. The throng of spectators grew restless, their voices rising in unison, proclaiming Joseph's survival as divine intervention. Such fervor couldn't be ignored. A pause ensued, awaiting the governor's judgment. Upon his arrival and an inspection of the ropes, the governor, possibly influenced by the groundswell of public sentiment, or perhaps the seeming hand of fate, made a choice. Joseph's date with the gallows was over, his sentence commuted to life. But the universe's reprieve for Joseph was ephemeral. Within the cold stone walls of his prison, he breathed his last in April 1806. The legend of Joseph Samuel, however, the man death couldn't claim, remains etched in history. Romel Broom. Romel Broom's case is one that, for many, exemplifies the challenges, controversies, and complications of the criminal justice system. His life, fraught with crime from its earliest chapters, leaves little room for sympathy, but the circumstances surrounding his execution, or lack thereof, pose uncomfortable questions about the nature of justice and the methods used to mete it out. Broom's early descent into crime saw him making frequent visits to correctional facilities. Despite numerous attempts to rehabilitate him during his tenure at the Ohio Youth Commission, he seemed almost fated to a life of wrongdoing. What's most horrifying is his proclivity for violence, particularly towards young girls, which he exhibited with disturbing regularity. It's not hard to understand the public outcry and demand for justice when he was found guilty of the abduction, rape, and murder of Trina Middleton, not long after being released on parole. The subsequent incident with Melinda Grissom, while not ending in tragedy thanks to her mother's brave intervention and the watchful eyes of bystanders, further solidified his reputation as a menace to society. The botched execution attempt in 2009 brought his case into the limelight once more. For 2 excruciating hours, the world watched as executioners struggled to administer the lethal injection, raising both ethical and practical concerns about the method. This event offered Broom and his attorneys a new line of defense as they argued against a second execution attempt on the grounds of cruelty. The Ohio Supreme Court, however, remained resolute in its decision. It's perhaps poetic justice, or maybe a mere twist of fate that Broom, who once eluded the hangman's noose, would evade it once again. Not by the hand of the state, but by a global pandemic, which claimed his life at Franklin Medical Center. The debate over the morality, efficiency, and implications of the death penalty will likely rage on, but Romel Broom's story, with its strange intersections of crime, punishment, and providence, will remain an unforgettable chapter in that discourse. John Smith. The story of John Smith, or Half-Hanged Smith, as he was later known, exemplifies the strange intersections of fate, resilience, and the human spirit. Living in a time when the legal system was notoriously harsh and the penalty for crimes often severe, John managed to dodge the ultimate punishment on more than one occasion. His initial escape from the noose, in what can only be described as a macabre spectacle, revealed not only the brutal nature of public executions, but also the changing sentiments of the crowd. Starting as spectators hungry for the finality of justice, they became unlikely saviors, swayed by the very human struggle for survival they witnessed before them. Their collective intervention is a testament to the unpredictability of mob dynamics and the capricious nature of human compassion. Yet John's story also warns against the dangers of recidivism. Despite his close brush with death and the public's unlikely mercy, he returned to his life of crime. It's an unfortunate reminder that while some people can turn their lives around after traumatic events, others remain entrenched in their ways. His continued brushes with the law and the inexplicable strokes of luck that often followed paint a picture of a man who seemed almost fated to escape the consequences of his actions. Whether it was the mysterious death of a prosecutor or the unusual decision of a jury, John seemed to lead a charmed life. But fate, it seems, had a final twist in store for him. At an age when most people of his era would be in the twilight of their years, John found himself facing the consequences of his actions once again. This time, however, instead of the noose, he faced exile. The act of transportation, a punishment that saw convicts sent to far-off lands, was both a sentence and an opportunity. Removed from familiar surroundings and the temptations of his past, one can only speculate if John finally found a semblance of redemption. In the end, the life of John Half-Hanged Smith serves as a cautionary tale, a story of resilience, and a reflection on the complexities of the human spirit, all set against the backdrop of a society grappling with its own concepts of justice and mercy. William Duell. The story of William Duell is a profound reflection on the unpredictable nature of life and the justice system's capacity for error, mercy, and redemption. Duell's narrative is not just about a young man's brush with death, but an exploration of societal attitudes, human resilience, and the transformative power of second chances. Duell's near-death experience is a chilling reminder of the fallibility of human-made systems, particularly the justice system. In the 18th century, death by hanging was the standard method of capital punishment in England, and the fact that Duell survived, it is nothing short of miraculous. The significance of his survival is compounded by the context of his life circumstances. A young man, just 17, condemned to die for his role in a grave crime. Public sentiment played an undeniable role in the fate that befell Duell after his improbable survival. It's a testament to the power of public perception and collective consciousness. In an era before organized campaigns for human rights or penal reform, the public's reaction to Duell's ordeal effectively spared him from facing the hangman's noose again. It's a compelling commentary on the role of collective empathy in influencing judicial outcomes. The decision to transport Duell to America offers a deeper look into the prevailing societal and geopolitical factors of the time. Britain's burgeoning colonial ambitions and the dynamics of London's overpopulation converged to determine Duell's destiny. In being sent to the colonies, he was handed both a punishment and an opportunity, a chance to begin anew in a land filled with promise and challenges. His subsequent life in Boston, punctuated by events as significant as the American Revolution, adds layers to his narrative. Here was a man who, once at the precipice of death in one continent, found himself in the throes of birth pains of a new nation on another. The juxtaposition is both ironic and poetic. William Duell's journey, from the gallows of London to the annals of American history, underscores the intricate dance between fate, human agency, and systemic structures. His story challenges us to reflect on the nature of justice, the value of life, and the transformative potential inherent in every human being. Willie Francis. The case of Willie Francis is indeed one that is marred with controversy, and it raises several crucial and deeply unsettling questions about the American judicial system, especially regarding race, juvenile justice, and the death penalty. His conviction and the subsequent events that unfolded, including his initial survival from the botched execution attempt, spotlight the glaring imperfections and moral dilemmas inherent in capital punishment, particularly in the context of mid-20th century America. Willie's case not only presented a legal anomaly due to the failed execution, but also highlighted issues related to the adequacy of legal representation, the treatment of juvenile offenders, and the influence of racial bias within the justice system. His youth at the time of the crime and the conviction, 15 and 16, respectively, is already a point of contention, as executing a juvenile offender raises profound ethical and moral questions. The racial aspect of the case cannot be understated either. Given the time period, in the South of the United States where Jim Crow laws were still in effect, African Americans were often subjected to blatant systemic racism and were not afforded the same legal rights and protections as their white counterparts. This racial dynamic, coupled with Willie's age, raises serious doubts about the fairness and justice of his trial and subsequent treatment. Willie Francis's legal representation during his trial was notably deficient. His defense attorneys neither challenged the prosecution effectively, nor did they present exculpatory evidence, even with discrepancies and suspicious circumstances surrounding the evidence, like the disappearance of the murder weapon and other vital pieces, and the dubious confession from a 16-year-old boy. The subpar legal representation Willie received during his trial was a gross failure in ensuring that justice was served and underscores how essential adequate defense is in safeguarding justice, especially in capital cases. The failed execution attempt and the subsequent legal battle brought forth by Bertrand de Blanc to prevent a second attempt shed light on the brutal reality of the death penalty. De Blanc's arguments before the Supreme Court raised legitimate concerns about the constitutionality of subjecting someone to the death penalty twice and the psychological torment it imposes. Despite these appeals to humanity and legality, the court permitted the second execution, signaling a grave deficiency in the system's capacity for mercy and reflection. Willie Francis's case serves as a somber reminder of the complex and often flawed intersections of race, age, and justice within the American legal system. It prompts us to reckon with the moral and ethical implications of the death penalty, especially when applied to individuals who might have been failed by the very system purported to ensure justice and fairness. This case challenges us to look deeply at systemic issues within the judicial process and consider the human cost of capital punishment. If you found this video fascinating, click this one on your screen right now and dive even deeper into the most unreal aspects of our world.